Hello and welcome everybody to yet another episode of the British Culture Podcast. I'm joined once again by who? By Sam, obviously. Sam, how's it going today?
I've been better. I'm going to be honest with you, James. It's really cold in Santiago at the moment, yet I have a fever. So I'm simultaneously burning, but also feel like I'm in a freezer at the same time. So it's a weird combination of sensations, not the most enjoyable period of my life, but here I am making a podcast for all of you guys. Before
Yes.
James starts talking, as always, make sure to check out the English Sponge website if you do enjoy this podcast and all of the others that we produce. And more importantly, I want to take this moment to thank you guys for 50,000 YouTube subscribers. Seriously, that's such a crazy number. When I started doing this with James about 9 months ago, we never thought we would have a number like this quite so fast. So really, big thank you to all of you guys watching.
Yes, thank you, Sam. 50,000 subscribers. It's great. We're very happy with that. The topic of today's video is going to be secondary schools in the UK. Now, you may not know the term secondary schools because in American English, they tend to use words like high school and middle school and things like that. In the UK, we have primary school from the ages of about 5 until 11. And then from 11 to about 16, we have secondary school. Actually, after that, from 16 to 18, we will go to college or go to sixth form. And I guess from the age of 18 and above, you might go to university. America has different names for each of those periods, okay? But we're talking about secondary school in the UK from the ages of 11 until 16. All right, Sam, would you mind just taking us through like a typical day going to secondary school in the UK? Maybe you're in, say, year 9 or something, so you're like 14 years old. What would a typical day like be?
So, year 9, 14 years old. Well, my secondary school days would start bright and early. When I was 14, my alarm would go off at, I think, 6 a.m., 6:20 a.m., very, very early in the morning, because I would need to be at the bus stop for around 7:20. The school bus would leave from the bus stop near my house at around 7:20. You would go there, obviously get dressed in your uniform beforehand, and I would see a couple of my friends. At 14, we would usually go into the little corner shop next to the bus stop, buy sweets, energy drinks, and if we could manage to, we would buy scratch cards as well. Although you are only allowed to buy those after 16 in the UK. You'd sit on the bus for maybe about 45 minutes to an hour as it took you to your school, talking to friends, listening to music. We would play a lot of games on our phones. We would play a lot of mobile games on our phones. We would arrive early into school at around 8:20, and I would go straight to the cafe. I'd go straight to the school cafe to buy myself a bacon sandwich. School would start, and the first lesson would always be tutor period. Now, tutor period is where you would go to a sort of registration class. I think that's the best way to say it. It's a class where your name is taken down to make sure that you are attending school that day. Then afterwards, you would go to several lessons. In secondary school, you really do a large range of different subjects. You do many more subjects in secondary school than you do in primary school. 2 or 3 classes in the morning, break time, a chance to get more food from one of the cafes, hang around with your friends, things like that. 2 or 3 more lessons, lunchtime. Once again, another time to maybe play football, talk to your friends, get into all different kinds of mischief. And then finally, we would finish off with 1 lesson in the afternoon before getting on the bus home from school. My bus would usually arrive back home at around 4 p.m., just after 4 p.m., I believe.
Yeah, all sounds very familiar. It's almost like every school in the UK is like exactly the same, because it's like I also used to get home at 4 p.m. I remember I would start watching kids' TV programs or TV programs at 4 p.m. when I got home. Let's talk about school uniforms. So at my school, yes, we had a school uniform. During the first 3 years at that school, we had to wear a tie. We had to wear a white shirt and a tie and trousers. And I can't remember if you were allowed to wear shorts or not. I have a feeling you maybe were allowed to wear shorts, but we had to wear a tie. And this was quite, caused a lot of problems because a lot of like 14-year-old boys like can't do a tie properly. I think that I didn't really know how to do a proper tie. I would just sort of try whatever and like just try to create some kind of knot. But we were always getting in trouble for not having our ties like done properly. But then in the next 3 years, they got rid of the tie and they replaced it with just some shirts, like just a white polo shirt and a jumper on top. And as for shoes, yeah, we had to wear, I think, black formal shoes. Honestly, it's hard to remember. Sam, did you have a
It was so
school
many
uniform?
years ago for you, wasn't it, James? At least 30 plus years ago.
It was about 4,700 years ago I went to secondary school. So Sam, you went to secondary school, was it just last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was last week, actually. I just finished my GCSEs.
Congratulations.
No, so our uniform, you clearly went to a more progressive school than we did because we had to wear a full suit, essentially. Shirt, blazer, tie. Now, you mentioned the shoes. The school rule was black leather shoes, which we obviously were very liberal in their definition. Lots of people wore Converses, lots of people wore Vans or Nike Air Force Ones. The teachers would always tell us off, but the argument would always be, well, the school rule is black and leather. These are black and leather. Therefore, I'm following the rules. Now, you mentioned about the ties, James, and it actually brings me on to something very interesting that went on with my school. So when I arrived in year 7, really young, fresh into secondary school, they actually changed the type of tie you were meant to wear. All of the older kids wore neckties. These are the traditional ties that you have to tie yourself. They go around your neck. My sister was in a couple of years older than me. I believe she was 2 or 3 years older than me at school, and she wore a necktie. But the problem was people would grab the ties of other people's and yank them down really, really hard. We would call it a peanut. And essentially what it did was it would make the tied portion really, really tight. And it would make it really, really difficult to take off. Not only that, it also hurt the other person. And that was happening all the time, constantly. So the school decided that they were going to combat this issue. They would move away from the old neckties and they introduced clip-on ties. Now, a clip-on tie is exactly what it says it is. It is a tie that you do not need to tie. It's a tie with a little metal mechanism that clips onto your shirt. Now, whoever thought of this idea clearly didn't think it through very well, because what was a problem with people peanutting ties came into a problem with people battering each other with the metal ends. The ties basically turned into like mini weapons that we would swing around and hit each other with really, really violently. And because it was like this little metal clip, they hurt. They left marks. I mean, it was not fun to get hit with one of those on a cold Monday morning. So, yeah, either way, the tie situation was definitely abused by the students, and it was a way to annoy other people, we'll say.
Sam, did you just spend your school years just engaged in constant violence? Because during the primary school episode last week, I remember you said that you performed WWE wrestling moves on your friends, and now you're talking about smashing them with a piece of metal. Is this? Did you have a violent time?
So I wouldn't say
during school?
I personally was violent. I just think children are quite feral. They're quite feral and quite violent. It gets even worse. That's
True.
not even like the worst of it. We used to play a game at lunchtime in secondary school called One Touch, One Bounce. This is a football game. It's really simple. You have to have one touch of the ball, and the ball is allowed to bounce one time. If you touch the ball twice, you are out. If the ball touches the ground twice, you are out. The twist that we added was if you were out, everybody would chase you and kick lumps out of you if you got caught. We called it one kick, one bounce rush, which means you got rushed by everybody else if you lost. So much fun. It was great.
Did you ever play a game called Bulldog at school or not?
Yes, we did. Mm-hmm.
So Bulldog, if I can remember correctly, it was a long millennia in the past. There were like, I think two people in the middle, and then everybody else would have to try to run from one end to the other end, right? We would have maybe 2 bags or 2 jumpers to show like the 2 ends. And you had to try and run to the other end. And the 2 people in the middle would basically just try to tackle you to the floor and like hold you there. And so, and then once somebody had been tackled to the ground, then they would join the group in the middle. And so near the end, you would be like the only person left trying to run around like everybody. In terms of violence, I'm trying to think of a few little things we used to do to each other. Obviously, there's like the nuggie, right? I don't know if you had this, the nuggie, and you would basically get
I know what it is, but it's just like so old to me. Like even the word itself just sounds like you're 40 years old.
Yeah, it was in the 1700s. You would basically take your fist and sort of do this, on somebody's head. And there was also like the wet willy. I don't know if you had this, and you would like lick your finger and then like put it behind somebody's ear.
The what?
Yeah.
What the hell is this? What was going on at your school, James? Jesus.
Times have changed. Times were different back in the old days. So it was called a wet willy. That's what it was called. And there was probably some other things, but I can't remember. Can you think of any more like little things?
There's two. There's 2 that come to mind. They were both games. Now, the first one is a game called Knuckles. Now, there are 2 different variations of Knuckles. One, where you put your fists next to the fist of another person, and you hit them on the knuckles. Right? Really simple. I'm doing the action here. You just hit the other person on the knuckles. First person to quit loses. We didn't play that one all that much. We played a different type of knuckles where you would line your hands on the table with your knuckles pointed down. The other person would take a coin, the thicker the better, so we usually use like 1 or 2 pound coins, and they would slide the coin across the table really quickly and hit into your knuckles. And the first person to bleed would lose. I still have scars on my knuckles from playing those games. They hurt. They did hurt a lot.
Yeah.
The other one I can remember is dead arm competitions, where essentially you and a friend would take it in turns punching the other one as hard as possible in the arm until somebody lost feeling in their arm. Reminds me. Oh, sorry, James. Yeah. It reminds me. This wasn't a game, but it was a pastime. Birthday beats.
Yeah.
Did you guys have birthday beats? This was so horrible. In other places, right? If it's your birthday, people are happy. They might sing to you. They might buy you a gift. No. In British secondary school, if it's your birthday, it's the entire school's job to punch you as hard as they possibly can, one time for each year that you are alive. So once you got to like year 11, right? You were getting punched like 15, 16 times per person. Per person.
The more that we talk about this topic, the more I think we've really been through some traumatic experiences. You know, I remember on my birthday, literally going around the school, literally like looking around every corner, like, oh, someone's gonna jump out and start beating me, giving me my birthday beats. Like you could not relax all day. I want a day that is supposed to be a celebration is literally a day of paranoia and pain. So yeah, I think that sums up the experience at secondary school pretty well. I wanted to talk a little bit about substitute teachers. I was just hearing about all the tomfoolery, right? All the tomfoolery that you got up to with your games of knuckles. Did you ever have substitute teachers, and did the entire class misbehave during when there was a substitute teacher present?
Yeah, we did have substitute teachers, but I want to clarify something by saying my class would misbehave whether the teacher was a substitute or a normal teacher. My class were infamous in the school for not being the best behaved group of individuals. There were fights. I remember once, I actually felt really bad when this happened, but I remember once a French teacher got hit in the head with a slice of orange. What happened was our French teacher, who, God bless her soul, she was a horrible teacher. She was really bad. And she was teaching French to 14-year-old British kids, which just isn't a great combination as it is. But she left the classroom to go like grab, I don't know, some activities or something. And as always, the class like erupted into chaos. We had people like throwing chairs at each other. Like it turned into like a mini war. And there was like this one slice of orange that was just flying around the classroom. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me who started throwing it. But yeah, this one slice of orange was just flying around the classroom. And I kid you not, right? She opens the door and everything went slow motion. As she opened the door and stepped back into the classroom, the orange flew across. And everybody, it was like a game of tennis. Everybody followed it. They watched it. They went... and it hit her square in the head. Little pieces of juice flew out. And I remember she just stood there. She dropped everything. All of the paper in her hand, she just dropped it. And then she slowly closed the door and walked back out. And the whole class went silent. It went from like a jungle, like crazy noise, to dead silent. Nobody said a word. And about 5 minutes later, the door reopens. And it's not her. It is our head of year who walks in. He points straight at the kid who threw the orange and goes, "Come here." Woo! Oh. That was fear like I had never felt before. Jesus.
Yeah, you know what? I will never teach I've taught English in the classroom. I'm never going to teach teenagers, ever. I've seen what teenagers do to teachers, and I especially have seen what they do to substitute teachers. I remember we had a maths teacher who, like your French teacher, was like just not good. Like he did not know how to control the classroom. He did not know how to, keep everyone's attention. What we would do is each of us, every time he turned his back to the class to write something on the board, we all moved our desks just like an inch closer to the whiteboard, and he would turn around and we'd move a bit closer. And then eventually, like, the front row of the class is like right next to him, like getting in the way. And he's like, he suddenly realized, what the hell is the whole class, and like moved forward. In the final year of secondary school, there are some exams that you need to do, and they are called GCSEs. So obviously every country has their own kind of exams. I've heard Americans talk about like finals or something, like I'm doing my
The
final.
SATs,
The
I'm pretty sure.
SATs, the finals or whatever. In the UK we have GCSEs. And Sam, how did your GCSEs go? Did you perform well? How'd they go in the end?
I absolutely smashed it out of the park. What else would you expect from me, James? I did 10 GCSEs and I got 4 A's and 6 B's.
Yeah, it's pretty good. 4 A's. 4 A's is nice. I think I did very, very.
Sorry, that's not just pretty good. That is exceptional.
Well, can't you get an A star in GCSEs, or
You can, but you need to be a nerd to get an A star, and I'm not a nerd.
There would have been nerds in your class, right? That got better, more exceptional grades. But it's true. In school in the UK, you don't want to be top of the class. Yes, and I think this is quite important distinction between some other cultures. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe in certain East Asian cultures like China, Japan, Vietnam, and so on. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's cool to be top of the class, right? Like if you're the kid in the class that is getting the best grades, I think in those cultures you are seen as like quite a cool guy. In the UK, you do not want to be top of the class. If you're top of the class, you're just a big nerd or a boffin, right? Like people would make fun of you for being like too smart and too good. To be honest, I really don't like that about our culture. It's literally like if you're too smart, it's like you're made fun of and looked down on. I really think that's stupid. Back to GCSEs, I was not top of the class in GCSEs. I was an underperforming student who got pretty average grades. I think I got like 1 A, 3 Bs and a bunch of Cs and like a couple of Ds. I was supposed to be...
You failed some of your GCSEs.
I don't think a D is...
A D is a fail.
I think it was...
A C is a passing grade at GCSE.
Yeah, I think the Ds were in topics that didn't matter. Like it wasn't maths, English or science. It was some other topics I didn't really care. I was an underperforming student because I was supposed to be really smart. I was supposed to, according to my teachers, I was supposed to be like doing really well, and I didn't really work very hard. So that was my GCSE story. Did you feel nervous before your GCSE exams or no? How do you feel?
No. So like the GCSEs are interesting, right? And I think before I explain a little bit what the GCSE exam period is like, it would be useful for the people listening to explain something a little bit different about the English education system. And that is, in the British education system, they let us specialise very early. When we are 14 years old, in year 9, we have something called options, where we choose which subject we want to continue and which subjects we want to drop. Of course, some subjects, such as maths, English, science, are still mandatory, but from a very early age, they allow us to start specialising. They allow us to start going down a certain pathway. The GCSEs, the content of it is not difficult. For anyone who works decently hard and is relatively intelligent, the content is not difficult whatsoever. The difficulty of GCSEs is the quantity. Because I did exams in 10 subjects, but each subject had multiple exams. The GCSEs took place over a 6-week period, and in that time, I had 27 exams in total. So in 6 weeks, I had to study for 27 individual exams. And I think that is actually the most challenging part of it, is that you have to balance so much. You have to do so many different things at once. And if you're strong in one subject but weaker in another, sometimes there's a bit of a conflict. Do I focus on the subject I'm stronger in to try and pull my grade even higher? Or do I focus on the one I'm weaker in and try and sort of make up for not being as good, try and pull the grade up to a more decent level? I studied really hard for my GCSEs. Now, from the last 2 podcasts, some of you guys may think that I was like a little hoodlum. I was like a little insane child. And I was. I'm going to be honest. I was a little bit crazy. But one thing I did do is I knew when to work hard, and I knew when to really like put my head down and study. And in that GCSE year, yeah, I really studied. I really practiced hard, and I got fantastic grades as a result.
Yeah, you sound like one of those annoying kids that like during class never pays attention, and it seems like you're always messing around, and then somehow you end up with awesome grades, like better than mine. But actually, I suppose the truth is you actually worked hard. That's the secret, right? You actually studied.
Yeah.
You know. So
what I'm going to say as well, just something we haven't mentioned. I don't know if it worked like this in your school, but we had to do exams at the end of every term in our classes, right? And how it worked in my school is they had a promotion and relegation system where each like class was broken into sets. Set 1 was the highest, set 5 was the lowest, right? You would do your end of term test, and if you were in the top 1 or top 2 in your set, you would move up to the next one. And if you were in the bottom 1 or 2 of your set, you would move down to the one below. Almost like promotion and relegation in football. Now, as an intelligent kid who didn't really pay attention all of that much, I was in relegation battles like every single term. I was like fighting for my life in set 1, like trying my hardest to survive. So I had like this feeling going into my GCSE year that I wouldn't actually do well unless I really worked hard, because I was used to being the bottom of the top group, if that makes sense. Yeah. Which really came off to me as if I wasn't that smart or I wasn't that intelligent. It was just I was comparing myself to the smartest kids in the year. Yeah. So I think that's something that had a big impact on me.
That's funny. I was also at the bottom of set 1 as well, and I also felt like an idiot. But then if you ever, ended up in a class in the set below, you suddenly feel really smart. Yeah, I was with all the nerds and the boffins. Something that we did, I think, every single year at secondary school, also at primary school, I believe, a few times, was sports day. So once a year, there would be like almost like the Olympics, right? Like there would be all these events that you would do. You would do like the 100-meter sprint, you would do the 200 meters, the 400 meters, the 800 meters, and the 1500. You would have the long jump, the high jump, and then of course you would have the regular sports like football and rugby and probably netball and things like that. And in our school we had 4 houses, which is basically 4 teams. So the year was split into 4. And each of the houses were named after a famous person. And I'm going to see if I can remember them. We had Faraday, Shackleton, Tennyson, and we had one more that I just can't remember right now. And I know that Faraday, for example, is a famous scientist who was responsible for like the creation of electricity. So one of our houses was named.
Tennyson is a poet, by the way.
And Shackleton, do you know?
No idea.
Yeah,
it does ring a bell.
Yeah.
It sounds really familiar. As long as Tennyson is Lord Alfred Tennyson, I believe, famous English poet.
Yeah, Shackleton definitely rings a bell, but I just can't quite place exactly where he is or what he does. And yeah, so they were in the 4 houses and we would all compete with each other. I have to say my house, Shackleton, basically won every single year. I don't know who was deciding the teams on that, but like all of the best athletes were all in one house, more or less, and so we destroyed everybody.
And you.
Yeah, and well,
all of the best athletes and James.
I have something that may actually surprise you, Sam. I'm actually quite good at sports. Now, I don't know if anybody would realize that. Maybe I come across as like just a language nerd or something, but I was actually very good at athletics and football. And in the 100-meter sprint, I did win one year, being the fastest kid in the school.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and I also won the long jump a couple of times. And so that 100-meter sprint win, that was a proud moment. Yeah, however, at rugby, for example, I was not that good, I was good because I was very quick. So if you gave me the ball, I could sometimes like just run around everybody and get a try. But if you asked me to tackle somebody, I would just get rolled over and I just mowed down. Because the funny thing is with sports at secondary school, of course, is that some kids had gone through puberty already and they were like basically adults. And some kids like me had not yet like developed fully. And I was trying to tackle like these 14-year-olds that are basically men already and just getting destroyed. What about you, Sam? How was your sports day?
Yeah, so we only did sports there in the first 3 years. So year 7, year 8, and year 9. So we weren't broken up into houses. We did sports day in our tutor groups. So there were 10 tutor groups in my year. I went to a really big school. And unsurprisingly, my tutor group won all 3 years. Unfortunately, I had to miss out on the second year due to an injury. I ran through a bog barefoot and sliced my foot open. Oh. That's a story for another time. I'm sure at some point on English Sponge, I will tell that story for the premium members because it is a really good one. But yeah, I had to miss out on the second year. But yeah, we usually won. I was our 800-meter runner. Now, we had some really strong long-distance runners, so I would usually finish second or third in the year doing 800. But we had some really good runners. So, not surprising.
Yeah, I don't know. Some people just have a genetic advantage, don't they, when it comes to certain things. Yeah, sports day was awesome.
They were like county cross-country runners, yeah. Whereas I played football. Yeah. So, levels, right?
Yeah, there are levels to this thing, man, Yeah, sports day was really fun. I liked it. It was very nerve-wracking, I can tell you, at the start of the 100-meter sprint, because they would usually put like this event like at the end of the whole thing. So everybody would have finished their events and everybody would gather around the 100-meter track. And you can imagine as you're crouched down there ready for the gun or whatever to go off, it's incredibly nerve-wracking. I remember literally shaking with adrenaline, which I think helped me to win, to do well. Of course, at the end of secondary school, this will be the last thing we talk about, I think. At the end of secondary school, there was prom. When you're 16 years old and you're about to leave secondary school and move past into the next stage, you would go to prom, and of course, you would need a prom date to go with. Sam, did you get lucky during your prom?
I absolutely did not have a prom date. No chance about that one. Yeah, no, prom's an interesting one, right? It is something that existed in the UK, but it used to be called a ball. Yeah. When my parents went to school, they would call it a ball, summer ball, right? But it became prom thanks to the Americans. It was good. It was just a bit meh, to be honest, right? Yeah. You just wear suit and tie, people turn up in fancy cars, etc. You go to a nice building, and essentially you just take photos the entire afternoon. And then after prom, now that's the fun part. You go to a friend's house and you all get absolutely smashed. I remember that was the first time I had successfully polished off an entire bottle of vodka to myself. Unsurprisingly, I don't remember very much of that night. But it was fun. From what people tell me, it was a good night.
That's really... we had a prom when I was 18, the end of sixth form. And one of my friends... Because we had a before prom party, right? So we had some drinks before we went to the prom. We were 18 at this point, so we were legally allowed to drink alcohol. And it was supposed to be the end of sixth form to go to university. And one of my friends got so drunk during the pre-drinks party that he couldn't actually go to the prom itself. He literally fell over. We were leaving the house and he fell into one of the bushes in the garden and just couldn't get back up for like half an hour. He was just just couldn't stand up and he vomited. And so he didn't even make it to the prom. My prom at 16 years old, I did have a prom date actually. It was really just a friend. It was actually just like my friend that I had known like since the beginning of secondary school. And I like ignored her the entire time. I don't know why. I think I was kind
Oh,
of...
how romantic,
I know.
James.
At one point she came over to me and said like, hi, you know, we're supposed to be like prom date. And I was like, yeah. And I just like didn't want to speak to her. I think maybe I was a bit embarrassed to like do the whole date thing. I was only 16, you know. And so, yeah.
Oh, how embarrassing, James. You have a girl.
I know. I was like, oh no, you know. I don't know. I just didn't want to be with her. I wanted to hang with my boys or whatever. Like, I don't know. And I just ignored my prom date.
It's no surprise that we're both single
Yeah.
still, hey?
I think we're seeing a pattern here throughout our lives. So I just ignored her. She probably felt really bad about it. I've never asked her. She probably cried. I don't know.
This is your sign. This is your sign, James. I know it was like 20 years ago, but send her a message and apologize.
I'm sorry.
Like, look, I've been thinking about it. I'm sorry. Okay.
She probably doesn't remember, most likely, or maybe she thinks about it every single night while she goes to sleep. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think on that note, we can end the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed listening to us talk about our tomfoolery in secondary school. Sam, do you have any last things to say before we finish?
No. Check out the English Sponge website for more podcast episodes. Soon, I don't know if it will be released by the time this enters YouTube, but soon we will be releasing an episode about British universities. It is going to be really good. I have some great stories to tell, so you don't want to miss it. Check out the English Sponge website for that one.
Yes, thank you. And that's it, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.